Hello, it is day 6, believe it or not. We're closing out our journey, our 2-week journey, 6 days in total, where we're looking at living in a hostile culture, the book of Daniel. And we're coming to Daniel 12, which is the last chapter in Daniel. And this brings us, Daniel 12, to the very close of the age, to the very return of Christ. It gets very specific as far as the number of days it pinpoints a certain event that God wants His people to be aware of. Jesus repeats the same event. And mind you, the book of Daniel was written in 586 BC. Jesus repeats these words some nearly 600 years later. Talks about an event that Jesus calls the abomination of desolation. Daniel talks about it. It is an event that happens at the Jewish temple. But Daniel brings us to this point where God's going to be the one that closes out history. It's not going to be weapons of man. It's not going to be the power structures of man. It's not going to be the governmental utopian dreams of man. God Himself is in control even of the governments, and as I've said before, His kingdom is going to come and His will is going to be done. Let me pick up reading in Daniel 12, and this is one of these sets of truths that is both pleasant and unpleasant simultaneously. It says, at that time, I'm reading in chapter 12, verse 1, Michael, the great prince, this is Michael the archangel, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, meaning the people of Israel, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until now. Jesus called it a time of tribulation. He says, but at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, meaning God's book of life, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth, meaning those that have died, will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. So it's talking about a resurrection that's going to occur. When Jesus returns, there's going to be a resurrection of the righteous. 1,000 years later, a resurrection of those that have rejected God's love. Verse 3, those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, close up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge. Let me pick back up reading in, in verse 9. He replied, go your way, Daniel, because the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless, and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, meaning they won't understand that the end of the age is coming, that God's kingdom is ready to burst on the scene. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. Now he gets specific, verse 11. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished, the abomination that causes desolation, and the abomination that causes desolation is set up. There will be 1,290 days. That's a little over 3.5 years. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. As for you, go your way till the end. He's talking to Daniel now. You will rest, and then at the end of the days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. So here this one event, it says this abomination of desolation. Jesus repeats the word nearly 600 years later. He says, when you see the abomination of desolation, that's the start of tribulation such as the planet Earth has never seen before. And it all revolves around this event on the Temple Mount. The book of 2 Thessalonians, chapter 2, talks about this event, and the Apostle Paul says that an entity, a being, will come into the temple and declare themselves to be our Creator. This is the abomination that causes desolation. That is the start of the last 3.5 years before Christ returns and the resurrection of the righteous dead occurs. The resurrection of the unrighteous dead doesn't happen until 1,000 years later. You can read all about this in the book of Revelation, chapter 20, and then chapter 21, where we enter into the eternal day. But here we have certainty that life is not out of control. God has a plan. He's working out a plan. There's an absolute definite timetable. But for God's people, there's going to be a tough time before there's a wonderful time. Jesus was honest. Before He comes and resurrects His people and brings His living people up in the air to meet Him and receive their resurrection bodies, that we will go through a period that He calls the Great Tribulation, a time that the earth, the likes of which the earth has never seen. We just need to know that God is always in control, that He will sustain us if we are destined to go through tough times in life, whether it's tribulation of any kind or the great tribulation itself, God will give us what we need when we need it, and He always, always rescues His people. He rescues us in different ways. Sometimes He rescues us through death itself. Many of us will live, I believe, though, to be rescued while we're still alive and see Christ return in the air and receive our resurrection bodies. Daniel pinpoints it. He says that's going to happen about 3.5 years after this abomination of desolation that the Apostle Paul talks about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. I hope that you are watching and waiting. I hope you're cheered in heart that we might be the generation that lives to see the return of Christ. But more importantly, that you know that life is not out of control on this planet. The governments of the world may seem very powerful and in control, but their power is limited, and they're about to lose all of their power very soon when Christ returns. I hope this little journey we've taken will equip you to live in an ever increasingly hostile culture. We are encountering that in our day and age, even right here in the United States. Thank you so much.